Welcome into the voice of college football on Notre Dame. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. Today, we're going to be talking about the top 5 transfer portal additions for the Irish in the winter portal. But first, guys, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. It helps us greatly here, and we're trying to put out a ton of content on Notre Dame football as the offseason is really starting to take effect. Now, let's get into the top 5 portal additions. Starting off with Malachi Fields from Virginia. Now, this is in no particular order, so we're just going to go through some of these guys and some of the position groups that we know that this team really needed. Now, Malachi Fields, receiver from Virginia. We knew Notre Dame wanted to go pick up a couple receivers in the portal. This is probably the biggest guy that they got. 6'4", 220. And he was the main guy for Virginia. Big body player who can run and make plays at various levels in the secondary, will be a huge target next year for the Irish and can help out that younger receiving corps. Now, Fields earned receiving grades above 90 from Pro Football Focus on 2024 on short routes, medium routes, and deep routes. So he's got all 3 levels of the game in his repertoire, and he only dropped 2 of his 94 targets as Virginia's leading receiver last year. So that's consistency, that's reliability. That's exactly what this Notre Dame team wants. Last year, he caught 55 passes for 808 yards and 5 touchdowns. That was huge. The year prior, he had 58 receptions for 811 yards and 5 touchdowns. That was in 2023. And obviously, he's got something to prove on a bigger stage potentially, and with the Notre Dame uniform on his back. So should be huge. Big things coming from Malachi Fields. We're going to move over to another receiver, Will Pauling. That was another huge get for Notre Dame. He is the receiver from Wisconsin. 2 years ago, he was their guy. Now, last year, not so much. Going to look for a change of scenery, but he's a completely different player than Malachi Fields. This guy's 5'10", 194. And while he wasn't as dynamic last year, in 2023, he had 74 catches for 837 yards and 6 touchdowns. Huge stuff from him, and he should potentially insert himself into this receiving corps as well. Now, last year, he had a bit of a drop problem, but, everybody can improve. He had 10 passes dropped last season. That was obviously pretty tough. And now he's reuniting with his wide receivers coach, Mike Brown, who was with Pauling back in 2023 in Wisconsin. So you're thinking that, hey, he can potentially take that season and apply it to 2025. Big stuff coming from the receiving corps. That was like the biggest question, I would say, going into this. Into this winter transfer portal, outside of the defensive line. The biggest defensive lineman I would say that this team ended up getting was Jared Dawson from Louisville. Dawson is a consistent player, missed 2 games with injury last season, but finished with 19 tackles, including 6.5 tackles for loss and 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble. He's 6'1", 302 pounds, and he is extremely hard to move off the line of scrimmage and plays with active hands in the interior on the defensive line. Now, I know what you guys might be thinking. Well, defensive line, we were pretty deep last season, and I think you'd be right, especially with the defensive line as they got into the playoffs. Just seemed like it was a next man up mentality, and there wasn't a huge drop off. Well, there just isn't enough bona fide starters right now on the roster, like, yes, sir, with experience on this roster, and that's why I really think that this move is a game changer for the Irish, and I would definitely put it in the top 5 winter portal transfer additions. I think that he can potentially just go in and start almost from day one, but we'll have to see how he plays in spring camp. And could the Irish have done better? Potentially, right? Like, they definitely could have got a huge name, but this still works, and he still could be a starter for this team. I really like it. Now, we're going to stick with defense. We're going to go with Devonta Smith. This is the defensive back from Alabama, and he's coming in and he's saying, hey, look, we're trying to continue the tradition that Notre Dame has found in the transfer portal with some of the nickelbacks in the past couple of seasons. Thomas Harper from Oklahoma State, Jordan Clark from Arizona State. They've earned a lot of trust in their ability to repeat production and help those guys out and bring them an opportunity. Devonta Smith stands at 5'11", 191, and he might be the best of the trio, as in when he arrived to Notre Dame. So that could be big, and he could potentially play really well and try to bolster that secondary, which was very respectful. But at the end of the day, you remember at the very end of the season, you just couldn't get that one extra stop that you really needed to get the offense the ball back. Now, He's been equally as good against the run as he's been in coverage, which I think will also really help Notre Dame. Pro Football Focus gave Smith grades of 71.2 in coverage and 70.8 in run defense last season. In terms of on-field production, that resulted in 30 tackles, 5 pass breakups, and 1 forced fumble. He makes plays. I think he will be a very, very formidable player for the Irish. We're going to stay in the secondary as well. Now, this is just a bit of a soft spot, but Jalen Stroman. I think that he could potentially be really good. We have NFL departures from the secondary, and that includes 2-time All-America selection Xavier Watts. Virginia Tech is where Jalen Stroman is coming from, and have a good chance as good of a chance as anyone to win that starting job. Now, shown with last year, a younger player can beat out an incoming transfer, but in that area, but unlike Hurd last year, Stroman is already on campus and will be available to compete in the spring. I'm talking about Aiden Schuler and Rod Hurd II with that. But the 6'1", 198 pounder is looking for a bit of a bounce back season than he had last year. Now, he was sidelined after the opener. He had a season-ending injury, and he wasn't able to play much for Virginia Tech last season. But prior to that, which is why I say he could potentially be one of the better players coming in, and as you might compare him to the previous defensive backs that have transferred into Notre Dame, is because he played 2 full seasons for Virginia Tech pretty much. He had 22 games in those previous 2 seasons, total 98 tackles, 4 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles, 2 tackles for loss. Now, he doesn't really have those takeaway skills that we might be missing, especially with Watts leaving, and that could potentially hurt him as far as being that impact transfer starter immediately. But, he could end up gaining that as well. And I think he definitely could be. And when we're talking about the transfers, it's going to be a huge thing to look at and say, like, hey, we need him. Now, this is just all speculation, could potentially end up not being a hit. We know that not all of these guys will be immediate impact guys, and not every transfer pans out, but I think that those will be the top 5 transfer portal additions in 2025, at least from the winter portal class. Now, I am missing a huge chunk of this team, such as the offensive line. So I wanted to definitely give those guys a shout out. This is me doing that right now. Should not forget what kind of impact they could potentially have on this team. But I wanted to keep it to 5. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Try to keep all the notes, in one place. So you'd have to bear with me if I misspoke on anything. But definitely should be a very exciting winter class to see what they can do in spring ball and how that could potentially form and shape the 2025 Irish. But like I said, let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys next time with more Notre Dame football content.